You've got to bring the customer to the center of the business. You can no longer build a business and then go look for the customer. You've got to bring the customer to the center of the business and then build your business around the customer.
So small business owners have evolved. The industry has evolved. The world has evolved. And we've now got this thing called marketing, which we all need to do and which has grown in importance. The problem is 80% of marketing just doesn't work. Now, our guest today, Kerim El Gabaili, is going to unpack that for us and tell us just why that 80% of marketing isn't working or is missing the mark completely. But it wouldn't surprise you that a large number of complaints to the ombudsman, the Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman, are centered around marketing disputes. And what is even more alarming is that 1 in 3 business owners have mentioned that they have either made a complaint to their provider or they want to make a complaint to their provider. And if they don't complain to their provider, they're complaining to their friends. So there is a big issue there. And we're going to unpack why we are getting it so wrong. Why are so many business owners getting marketing wrong? So welcome today, Kerim El Gabaili. Kerim, quite an extensive resume we've got. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for inviting me.
That's right. Welcome. Loving to have this conversation with you. Now, you're the managing director at One Point, which a marketing agency. Multifaceted marketing, though, not just digital. And that's important because that's going to come out why that's important in our conversation. You've been a judge for the Australian Marketing Institute Awards recently, but in the past, your company's received a number of awards for some of the marketing campaigns and strategies that you've implemented, which is great. I mean, you've worked with some big well-known companies. So I think Subaru was one, and there were a few others that come to mind.
Mazda, Accor, Knight Frank, you name it. We've
some
worked with quite a
big
lot of
organisations. But also, though, you are, I guess, a small business owner yourself. You've got a team of, I think, about 15 to 20 people. That's right. Which is where most small businesses are sitting. You were actually one of the fastest growing family-run businesses at One Point and awarded with a Deloitte Award for that. So probably a key to the growth is the way that you've marketed. So you're a man that knows what he's talking about and does what he's talking about. So we're looking forward to hear from you. Why are we getting marketing so wrong?
Thanks, Paul. Look, I think if I can take a step back and say one of the things I've understood many years ago as a small business owner, and even in the agency when we were over in Piedmont, when you peel the onion back enough times, what you come at the core of everything you do around marketing has to deliver commercial outcomes. And for many years, you have agencies that, want to focus on key areas of marketing, but without that, clear direction that doesn't matter what you're doing, you've got to deliver that commercial result. And having had a small business and many different businesses in over the many years, I have that business hat on every time I work for my clients and say, if I was my client, what would I want, right? That's the number one thing, because that's a really strong perspective on delivering outcome. Second of all, what I find is it's like building a house, Paul, right? Who's the first person you call? And what I'm finding is people think that calling the plumber, calling the bricklayer, calling the concreter, calling the electrician is the way to go. It's not. You call the architect. And what does the architect do? He builds a plan, right? He talks to you and says, how many kids do you have? Do you like spending time in the backyard? Do you have family functions? And starts to build a house that's suitable to you. Whereas I find that the marketing is the same. We have this knee-jerk reaction and people start going, okay, I've got to do SEO because I know somebody who's doing SEO and it's working really well. Or I've got to build a website, or I've got to do Google AdWords. It's not going to work. Well, you can work if you're lucky, right? But in most times it won't work because the strategic work that takes up time and it takes an investment is often overlooked. It's like building a high rise. The bigger the business, the deeper the foundations. So if you want to build a big business, a good business, you've got to invest in building that foundation. You've got to call the architect. You've got to call the engineers. You've got to call someone who's strategically going to build a plan. Right? And often, one of the first things which I always find surprising when I ask my clients what does success look like, you get that blank look on their face because they haven't thought it through. And so we work with them and start to put together what does success look like. And success doesn't have to be difficult either. And sometimes we got clients that go, oh, Kerim, we want 50% growth, and that's fine. Where do we start? And we often start with retention. And we say, okay, what's your churn rate? If it's 10%, let's see if we can reduce it to 5%, because that's going to go straight to the top line on that growth trajectory that you're looking for that 50% growth. It's easier to retain a client than it is to gain a new one, number one. And also, it's important that when we do go out and start spending your advertising money, that we keep clients. So if there's a reason why you're losing them, we want to make sure we close those holes. Secondly, we ask them, how many clients do you have? And I might say 200 clients. I said, well, how many products and services do you provide? Well, we have 5 products. Are they all using those 5 products? No, they're not. Okay, so let's upsell and cross sell. They know you, they trust you, they use you, they're buying other services off you. Hey, that's a lot cheaper to get a client, and far more cost effective to get a client that already knows you and trusts you than it is someone who absolutely has no idea that you exist. So those are the 2 things that we look at immediately. Then we say, okay, what's your conversion rate like? Well, Kerim, we're at around 20%. 1 in 5 we win. Okay. What if we get that to 30%? Right? It's just going to make our ROI a lot easier to achieve. And those are some of the key fundamentals that we start off with, and we put a definition to what success looks like. And of course, we wrap that with, what's the timing around it, all that sort of business. The other thing is then when we look at winning new business, we start with, okay, what does good business look like? What does your top 10% look like? And and one of the things that's important to me is it's not just about turnover, it's about what margin do they give you as well. And also what's important to me is that they're nice people and you enjoy working with them, because nice people always bring out the best in you. The other thing is they pay their bills on time, because chasing bills is such a waste of our time, and it can drain our cash flow. So it's not just top line figures, it's bottom line figures as well that we look at when, and what's equally important is, are these customers the kind of customers that will buy more than one product and service from you? Okay, so we help build that profile. Once we've identified that, then we do a deep dive into building that profile. Why that's really important is because if you're going to go hunting, you want to make sure you know what you're hunting for, right? So you get the right the right bait on the hook.
Absolutely. I
And
always say that if you're in the market, and we use that hunting analogy to describe the types of clients that we're targeting in our accounting business, and I always say to people, if we're hunting rhinos and elephants, don't spend our time with the rabbits and chickens, because they're not our market.
that's right. Yeah, absolutely right. And just having that clarity makes a big difference, right? And why does it having that clarity make a big difference as well? Because when you're even looking at the social media platforms, they ask you for customer profiles, right? When you're doing, your digital campaigns on Google, they ask you for customer profiles. When you go to a database provider, they ask you for customer profiles. So if you can have those customer profiles collated and in your armory, if you like, it's just going to make you more effective and more efficient across all those different channels, whether it's direct marketing or whether it's social or digital marketing. It also opens your scope around what sort of hubs do you want to hang out in. Chambers of commerce, where, who, see who's part of the membership. It gives you more strategic understanding of your direction, and where you invest your time, not just your advertising dollars. Your time's probably, or it is more valuable because you can't get it back regardless of the money you make. Um, so once we've got that really well defined, then we look at branding, because now your brand has to resonate, right, with that audience, and it has to talk to that audience. And one of the things that we identify when building that profile is, what is that specific person's challenges and aspirations, and how, why would they buy our products? Because we got to make sure then on this other side that our brand speaks to that, right? And our services that we have speak to those problems and the solutions. We connect the dots for them. The assumption that they're going to work it out, it leaves too much risk out there. And so we make sure that all your branding and all your assets and all your communication is consistent and on point with the audience. And that means, potentially looks at, doing a brand refresh. It could mean, rebuilding your website. It could mean a whole bunch of different things when it comes across, your branding assets or your marketing assets. What's really important, then it's the technology. What are you going to do with the technology? Who are you going to use? How is it all going to sync? How are you going to connect it to your social media, to your direct marketing efforts, to your website, um, to your e-newsletters? How do you have one single view of the customer's behavior and their level of engagement with your brand? So the technology plays a critical role as well. It gives you the numbers to make good management decisions around marketing. And and as you have that technology in there, the other thing that's really important is looking at, how do you build? Now I've got my profile, I've got all my marketing assets, I've got my technology in place. Then you start to say, okay, now I'm going to build out this customer journey. And you start to think about, where are they at the awareness stage, where they're hanging out, what are they thinking, what are they feeling, right through to the conversion. And there might be multiple touch points along the way. And it's at this point in time that you determine what is the best channel for that. Is it a social media channel? Is it a direct marketing channel? Is it a network channel? Is it an event that you want to organize? Is it merchandising? I think I shared with you one day that story about the merchandising piece that we sent out on behalf of one of our clients, and it was, a box with a pair of thongs, a beautiful brochure. It was personalized to them. It was in a ribbon, and it ended up in their office. And everybody who received the thongs were more than happy to speak to our client. It became a bit of it broke the ice, right? It broke the ice. So merchandising is a great way of doing it as well. But as you map out that journey, it allows you to first track it across your digital, or your technology, and you can pinpoint if there are bottlenecks. And you say, you know what, we can do this better. We got a drop off of 30%. Wow, that's a big drop off. What can we do here? Do we need to do something before we even get here? Are we missing something along the way? And it's process improvement, right? But you got to, the old saying, you got to measure what you manage, or I think it goes something like that, where you can manage better what you measure. But definitely having that technology in place, it really gives you the numbers. And so going back to your original question, is why 80% of marketing fails is because people don't invest in getting these things in place. Simple as that.
Yeah, it seems like the way you've described it, like I was making notes as we were talking, that like I think the first 5, 6, 7, 8 points, you didn't mention a tool, you didn't mention a technology, you didn't mention a platform. And a lot of those points that you're mentioning, the questions that you're asking, don't, the answers to those questions, you can act on that without spending a cent.
Hmm.
But the key thing is you've got that clarity about, you talked about, who is my client? Who do I want to work with? Um, how do I look after the clients I've got? How do I make sure I can I sell more to those existing clients? They're all very powerful strategies. And I'm reminded of a couple of examples. One where we had a client who was so, I guess, yeah, wanted to be on Instagram. He wanted to be, that had to be his focal point. And I said to him, well, okay, tell me, why do you want to be on Instagram? And he says, well, all my competitors are doing it.
That's exactly
Okay.
right.
And then I said, well, hang on, who makes the decisions for your customers? And like in this case, architects and project managers. And I said, where do they spend their time? Are they on Instagram, or do they actually want you to go and talk to them directly? To which he said, well, they actually want to see me face to face. They don't have time to look at Instagram. And I said, well, okay, shouldn't you spend more time actually going and meeting with those people? And as a result, the conversions increased because he actually spent time with the decision makers in the way that they wanted to be reached. Whereas the Instagram actually had a bit of a side benefit for him, because it was what his staff used to celebrate the good jobs that they were doing. And it also meant, come and work for us because we're doing this great stuff. So it actually helped with employment opportunities, creating a better workforce. But winning the work, it wasn't through Instagram, it was through that face to face personal contact.
Absolutely. Because, what I found, well, I mean, what you're saying is the reason why we don't position ourselves as a digital agency, because digital, and in some cases, when people call themselves a digital agency, they're really referring to they're in social media and they're in Google AdWords. And to me, they're just an advertising channel, just like cinemas, radio, newspapers, and magazines. They're just advertising channels. As a matter of fact, I start off with being channel agnostic. I don't believe in channels. I believe in building customer journeys and then determining which is the best touch point and which channel that might be. But that's the key. What we're finding is that's the key thing, a challenge out there for customers. They're just going out, and it's because somebody else is doing it, I should be doing it. I had a great example around that when I worked in the automotive industry, and then I left and then came back. They were all doing the same thing. It became a big copycat environment. And that's why we're not industry specific, right? Is because having working across professional services, we have shopping centers, we have law firms, we have a whole range of different clients, and there's something to be learned everywhere that you can transition across, right? So, but fundamentally, whilst we live in this ecosystem where there's all these apps and platforms, and they're fantastic in their capabilities. We have TV, and now we don't just have Channel 7, we have Channel 7 digital with all these other channels that are specific to a particular audience. All this is evolving, and it's really, and people go, oh my, I can't keep up all these changes. But here's the thing, that the target is us. And we as human beings fundamentally have not changed. We still are driven by the same emotional drivers. And we still need to belong to communities. We still need to contribute. We still make 90% of the decisions out of fear and scarcity. So human behavior hasn't changed a great deal. So whilst everything is inconsistent, some of the main things are very consistent, and that's us as the target. The only thing is that our attention span is getting less and less. So we've really got to nail it from the get go. As a matter of fact, it always surprises me where I still see ads where the company brand is at the top, and I go, mate, nobody cares. It's like, I fix this problem. This is where you get it and why you should trust us. And this is our contact details. As a matter of fact, the company details are right at the bottom, right? Because that first heading about what problem you solve is what's going to grab my attention if that's a problem that I have. So even understanding design in this environment is really important. And you've probably heard me say this, and I keep on saying it. You've got to bring the customer to the center of the business. You can no longer build a business and then go look for the customer. You've got to bring the customer to the center of the business and then build your business around the customer.
So I think the way you've described marketing and the approach to marketing is really, if we took all of those businesses that had complaints about their marketing and we asked them, did you go through this process? I'm pretty confident the answer would be no. I think we know that they've probably found something that somebody else is doing and tried to latch onto that and been disappointed with the results. So I think whichever platform you're using, that's really the last decision you make. And we don't spend enough time in actually assessing, who are our clients, and who do we want to work with, and what can we sell to them, and how do we do that better, and then how do we tell people we do it better so that they think of us first.
Absolutely, and that's why again I make it very clear to everybody we're not a digital agency. It's because when you're a digital agency, you just see the world as vertically in this area, and you just shove your customers onto Google AdWords or Google Display or Google Retargeting without that strategic part and without the strategy. I mean, it's why 1 in 3 people companies are complaining. It's why 80% of marketing is not working. And in the end, it really shows in the way people behave. What I mean by that is, soon as things get tough, what do the people cut? They cut their marketing budget. It is so counterintuitive, right? If your marketing is meant to deliver leads, so when things get tough, you need more leads. And what do people do? They cut marketing because it's not working. They don't get the return on investment. They don't have someone who's focused on commercial outcomes. Because if they were getting commercial outcomes, if they were getting 10 leads and they were converting, say, 3, and they were making X amount of dollars every month, they go, guys, things are getting tough. We need more leads. Let's invest more in marketing and cut back in other areas because we want to retain revenue and market share.
Look, Karim, in describing that, what I've heard, and look, I am an accountant, so I'm going to be attuned to
Mm.
this, but I've heard you talk about numbers. Heard you talk about numbers of leads, numbers of inquiries, numbers of conversions. What does it mean in terms of your bottom line? All measurement, and giving that feedback. Is it working? What do we need to improve? And you mentioned it earlier that people aren't measuring the outcomes of their actions, and possibly they're not even setting a target for what kind of outcomes they're expecting. Um, so how do we? What sort of tips do you have in terms of, I guess, setting some objectives, and how do you measure it, and how often should you, I guess, adjust your strategy?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is um, you've got to put in the capability to measure first and foremost. But for me, the big numbers are around the cost of acquisition. You've got to have a cost of acquisition. Why is that important? That sets the foundation for your next year's growth. And you can say, okay, my cost per acquisition, for argument's sakes, is $1,000 a customer, right? And then you're able to reverse engineer your budgets. What I mean, if you want to grow by $1 million, if a customer is going to cost you $1,000, you know exactly how much to budget, right? And second of all, what I find interesting is that, well, in setting numbers, it was interesting. I'll give you an example today. I went to see a client. They wanted to grow by 20%. And when we worked out the numbers, that was going to, based on what they thought the average customer bought in, it was almost doubling their revenue. And all of a sudden, it was a reality check. Hey, no, we can't get that 20% growth. Those 40 extra customers are going, if they spend an average of X amount per month, they're actually going to double our revenue. And no, that's too ambitious. So these are the sort of, because you go through that first part of the process and you do that profiling exercise, it will give you the groundwork for really to set some realistic numbers based on your capability to support that growth, and secondly, for your budget to afford that growth, right? So again, it's in that strategic planning. There's no set formula, right? Because every business is different. A law firm is going to be different to, say, a car yard, right? Um, and manufacturing is probably the one that has a little bit more restrictions as well, because I guess in a law firm you try and hire more people, so it's easier to upscale than, say, a manufacturing plant is, even though, with all fairness, it's really hard to get people at the moment, irrespective of what profession or industry you're in. So sorry I couldn't answer that in a more detailed way, but I think that's the reality.
No, I think you've given us a good snapshot there in terms of, you actually have to look at your business and understand how your business works and what it means to your business, and that cost of acquisition is a key thing. So you do need to understand your business and how you work, and set your targets based on your business. There's no point setting targets based on somebody else's business or a business. You mentioned manufacturing versus law firms. They're going to have very different cost of acquisition and profit margins and life cycle of a customer. So you have to be very careful about using data based on your business. And if you don't know the data, you need to start measuring that data and actually find
Absolutely.
out. I remember, a good experience and a bad experience of our own marketing. The bad experience I'll share, I'll put my hand up and say I've been guilty of this, is not actually measuring the outcomes from advertising or marketing spend to see that it was actually creating the results that we wanted. And we persisted with that for too long. But on the other side, I remember running a seminar, and we had an expert come along to speak, and he said to me, "Look, your numbers are very low. Are you disappointed with that?" And I said to him, "Well, no, I'm not, because all the people that are coming to the seminar are the type of customer we want. And we only actually need one conversion from this seminar, and we've grown a 5-figure revenue from that client with a very low cost of acquisition." So in terms of that was a good outcome for us if we got one customer. So sometimes it's not always about huge numbers, it's about the right numbers.
That's exactly right. Absolutely, 100%. And it goes back to what you just mentioned. It's about knowing your business, knowing your numbers, so that you can make smart decisions.
Yes. So I think you shared some great examples there of why we're getting it wrong and what we should be focusing on. I'm always of the belief that you shouldn't be doing this yourself unless you're actually a marketing expert yourself. You shouldn't be doing your marketing yourself. So if our listeners want to get in touch with you, Kerim, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I mean, the first thing is they can always call me direct, and my number's 0414 442217. Otherwise, they can go to the website www.1pt, P for Peter, T for Terry.com.au, and the one is the number one, not the word one. So 1pt.com.au. They can go there, have a look. There's forms on there they can fill out. But yeah, I mean, they're probably the two of the easiest way. Otherwise, there's my email, Kerim, Kerim, at 1pt.com.au. One of those three methods, they can reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to even give them some guidance around what are the things that they should consider, because every business is different. But one of the important things is, I think, for marketers as well, is to make that transition to think of marketing more with a business hat on rather than a marketing hat on as well.
That's great. Thanks for that, Kerim. So Kerim's contact details, we'll share those in the show notes and also on the website, thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. And I look forward to hearing more from Kerim, hopefully in the future, drilling into a bit more on marketing, because it is a key area for business growth. And I think you touched on this, that we need to invest more in our marketing activities, particularly when times are tough and sales have dried up. We need to work on that pipeline. So great discussion today. We're really appreciative of your time, Kerim. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
You reach out to Kerim, have a look at the website. That's pt.com.au, and get in touch with Kerim to find out how he can help you with your marketing strategy for your business.
Thanks, Paul.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favourite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions, because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes, along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.